Good afternoon, Mykolaiv. Good afternoon, members of the Ukrainian Maritime Cluster. I'm very happy to join you today. It's my third European Maritime Days with Ukraine, and I'm glad that this happens in a dear city, the city of Mykolaiv, which I was there just over a week ago. I'm discussing about Maritime Days is not just about the tradition of Ukraine and other areas of coastal Europe, but in reality today it's to find solutions on how we can move forward.
I want to delete myself.
In the real implementation of projects. TIASI started its work in Ukraine 4 years ago during the pandemic, and now we are inside the war. We continue our work developing a super cluster that first focused in aerospace, and then as the years went by, we expanded into the shipping and now agro. TIASI is part of all the EU-Ukraine focus groups and is assisting European Commission officials to create policy for Ukraine and clusters. And as you're aware, there's a call that it ends on June 4th, which is going to be the first call between Ukraine and Ukrainian EU clusters to collaborate. And it's a great opportunity to start finally actually doing projects and not just talk about it. So today, apart from introducing to your members our cluster, which I'm sure are aware of our collaboration with Ukrainian Maritime Cluster and Ukrainian Cluster Alliance, I would like to discuss about some practical issues about this collaboration. The previous speakers have mentioned the support that is needed by the central government. They have spoken about the necessity of funding, but they have to take in consideration that the funding has to be applied and projects have to be implemented based on the reality. And the reality is that there's a war in Ukraine. And discussing today about infrastructure, it's a little bit, I would say, premature. And the problem is not what Ukraine will become after the war. The problem is what happens today. And even though in our cluster as well, we're discussing about huge infrastructure projects, we came to realize that in order to assist Ukraine today, and in order to pave the road for shipbuilding or aerospace or energy projects, is to assist projects that are cross-sectoral. In other words, we have to look in every region of Ukraine and see what are the advantages and how could existing infrastructure and existing know-how could be combined with foreign or European know-how in order to develop new projects. And I'll give you an example. We do know that Mykolaiv has or had a great shipping industry, which the last decade or more has been in despair. But at the same time, everybody wants to revive the shipping industry in Mykolaiv and the general region. How do you actually do this? How do you actually bring ship tycoons from Greece and all around the world, start building ships in Mykolaiv? Well, it's easier said than done, unless you create an incentive for them. And the incentive cannot be just financial. The incentive cannot, because you are going to outcompete with Poland in Europe, you're going to outcompete with China and Korea and Japan. And these shipping tycoons will prefer to invest and build their fleet there because there's no risk to the point, and this is what I propose, is to create the incentive for them to put in their strategic planning the region of Mykolaiv. And what is the region of Mykolaiv other than shipping can do? There's vast territory in agro. As you know, there is a lot of commerce around sunflower oil, wheat, etc. Even during the war, there is a corridor that has been created, at least for a year, till half a year ago to transport wheat and other agro projects. So what we propose to our friends in Mykolaiv in the shipping industry, while they're doing all the planning, of course, to build shipyards and ships, etc., and approach the stakeholders, that they have to create cross-sectorally other type of collaboration with the local industry in order to create combined projects that will be interested all over the world. At this point, in my last trip in Mykolaiv, we discussed a very big agro project. It relates to planting trees, and this will take 3 to 5 years for them to grow. But why did we decide this in a cluster that we do aerospace? Because we understand that nobody's going to bomb trees. It makes no sense to bomb trees. And at the same time, it will not be, it will create jobs for the Ukrainians today, and it will incent Ukrainians that left Europe to return. And looking at the EBRD invests in Ukraine, and if you look at it, 30% of the money go to agro sector, exactly because the risk is not as great as it would be in an airport or an aircraft manufacturing plant or a shipping building plant. To close this, and I would like to open it to questions from you, I would like to say the following. I believe that Ukraine's prosperity and perseverance should be based in the Ukrainian diaspora as well. There are about 7 million Ukrainians that left Ukraine. They're roaming the European countries to North America, and they're already establishing themselves in different factors. The proposal to Ukraine is not to lose this Ukrainian know-how. Everybody else is very happy to absorb it, either it's in Europe or the US. For example, there are 20,000 Ukrainians in Cyprus. Today, they're digital nomads that are working for US companies. Even though they get incentives from the European community to be in the EU, all their work does not register under EU IP. This is something that you should put on top of your agenda. Ukraine must retain its IP and must create its value within the EU, any type of channel, because if it's going to be absorbed, it's going to be a total takeover by European or foreign industries. And maybe this is the case in other countries outside Europe, but this cannot be happening and cannot be allowed to happen within the borders of Europe. One of the ways to support Ukraine is actually support its people, not as subcontractors, but as project leaders, and assist them in persevering during the war and afterwards. In other words, my proposal is, and I say this to European partners, that Ukraine should not become another colony of European magnates, either its countries or big corporations. This is the only way that the Ukrainian people will make sure will remain in Ukraine, because if Ukraine is going to be depopulated further, doesn't matter what you're going to build there. There's not going to be enough human resources with the right skills to support such growth. I would like to thank you again. My best to Artem, Natalia, and Olena, who are doing a terrific job. I understand they're roaming Europe promoting the Ukrainian maritime industry and the Ukrainian cause. You have partners in 7 countries that TIASI is, and with the first opportunity, we'll create projects with you. Thank you for having me here at the European Maritime Days.